Hey, Off-White Coat listeners, it is my privilege to get to tell you about this sweet deal from our friends over at Picmonic. If you haven't heard about Picmonic, it is a fantastic picture-based mnemonic platform that can certainly help out any student. Most of the videos are around 2 minutes long and provide a quick and effective way to memorize material for any upcoming medical exam. It is extremely efficient. They have this search bar function where you can search playlists on general topics like renal to step 1 to step 2, or even first aid and other books. If you want to review the Picmonic for later, you can even make a playlist of your own. Picmonic even has this repetition algorithm that is spaced out according to your learning needs. This helps with increasing long-term retention and allows you to review the right information at the right time. One of my favorite functions is the quizzes that are associated with each Picmonic. I'll take the quiz first and then learn about the associated pictures and what facts I need to sharpen up on. Honestly, Picmonic is a fantastic tool, and if you use our code OFFWHITECOAT, you'll get 20% off. That's Off-White Coat with no spaces. So what are you waiting for? Make studying the easiest part of your day. Sign up with Picmonic and use Off-White Coat to save yourself some money.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Off-White Coat podcast. I am your host today, Mary Beth Skinner, and today I'm joined by the original host, Jordan Abney.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, today,
I'm still
yeah, he's unfortunately still here, but
it's only a matter of time till I get the boot.
We have done the old switcheroo in this week's rotation review. So I am officially your host, and Jordan is in the hot seat, and we're going to ask him the hardcore questions of internal medicine.
She took my job and she took my chair.
Yes. So basically what it comes down to it, Jordan, is do you like internal medicine?
I will say that I have mixed feelings about this rotation.
This core in general.
Yeah, this core was tough. I will say, I learned a lot. I guess I saw a lot of interesting things. It was right in the middle of COVID, so I was on COVID floor sometimes, which looking back now, at the time, it kind of sucked because I didn't do anything that week because students couldn't see COVID. But, if I could have done more, that would have been, helpful. It was good to see those people at the front of the research trying to figure out what things are done. Even to that, COVID had struck hard in the New York, Jersey area where a lot of things were kind of shut down. As a student, I remember we couldn't even go into the ER and the ICU for a couple of the weeks in the rotation just because there was so much COVID in there and we weren't supposed to be getting exposed.
Well, explain that a little more. They had opened the ER basically to inpatient people for internal med, right? And then they did a COVID ward.
Yeah,
they didn't want to expose you guys.
Mm-hmm. There's a moment everybody that had COVID were being isolated, and then at that point we had too many people that were isolated, and they had to eventually just make everybody in that ER technically it was open air. You could have patients in any of the rooms that had COVID. Okay. Nowadays that's not uncommon, but the issue is everybody was very concerned, and they thought that if you even saw, put them out in the open, that there was a risk of infection.
Yeah. So they didn't want you guys to go down there, basically, because they didn't want to expose you. Yeah. And
you could, if you were, and there's a couple times it just made it easier for us to go down there. Mm-hmm. We just wore N95s. I mean, come on. We definitely wanted to be part of the stuff, but yeah, there was a shortage of N95s. So this is like I said, COVID. So mass shortage. They didn't want to give N95s to students.
Right.
For us to go down there when we're not even supposed to see COVID patients.
Right. And then potentially get sick yourself.
Yes. So that accompanied with sometimes there was some drama in the hospital, or people were, I guess being rude to each other when they really didn't need to be, and things like that just made it awkward as a student. Mm-hmm. And so I have mixed feelings about internal medicine. It definitely wasn't the highlight of my medical career by far. Yeah. I really enjoy doing things hands-on, and I felt like I did none of that. I did a lot of paperwork.
Oh, I'm sure. And running around, right?
Yeah, I did a lot of running around.
would take scripts to the 6th floor and the 5th floor and the 4th floor. And sometimes I would come up and they'd be like, "Oh, can you take this script to this other?" Because then the nurses would hand them out to the patient. So the residents would write the script, and then I would be the delivery boy to take it to wherever they needed to be. I did learn how to work a copy machine, though.
Oh, that's something you need to know for medical school.
Yes.
It?
I did not think they didn't bring up working the copy machine the first 3 years of medical school, but I'm glad at the end I still don't know how to
you don't need to know that. It was sarcasm. You do
I
not need to know
that.
that.
I was being an idiot. Yeah,
okay.
I know. Yeah, there's no reason why I should have. And I was the worst person. I had to not only call IT, but like bring in every student to try to help me figure out how to work this.
Where was the secretary? Who knows? It doesn't matter.
Sometimes
it doesn't matter. Put this on your CV and call it a day. It's a talent. Copywriter.
Yeah, there you go. I can fax something now.
Faxer. Check. Well, even if you
really
were...
good with a stapler.
Yeah, staple gun or something to shoot yourself in the head.
Mm-hmm.
But you lived about a 2-minute walk to the hospital, so at least you got some exercise running all that stuff around.
Yes. That was the best part about my internal medicine rotation was the fact that I lived 2 minutes away from the hospital.
Yeah.
And I just got to slide on in because the days were early, too. They were like at 7 a.m.
Very early, maybe very 6. Long.
Might have been 6. Yeah. Very,
unnecessarily long. Like, you guys wouldn't have much to do, or you did your rounds, and you would have to stay.
Mm-hmm. The issue was we would have meetings from 1 to 3 every day as well at just the students. And if we had to go back after that, too, where they would just be hanging out, like we would just be sitting there. Like sometimes the residents wouldn't even be there, and we would just be sitting at the hospital.
Where would the residents be? Like home?
No. They would be working or doing something else in,
okay.
somewhere away from us.
You meant like the residents were home, but you guys had to stay.
You just stood around. You would go see your patients, make sure you had everything. But and most of the time it was, hey, the only reason they needed you back was so that you could like write some notes for them and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it was just you sitting at a computer kind of by yourself writing the notes on some patients and then hoping by the time you give it to them that they say you can leave now. Or running scripts and all that other stuff, which I don't mind it because I get my exercise then, but hella boring.
Yeah, no, it is, especially when you've come to learn. You just got off a rotation where you were very hands-on. And here you are just running papers around, trying to find a copy machine that works,
mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what was a typical day like for you in internal med, like start to finish? Do you remember?
I would, so most of the days, and we also did like some subspecialties where we did CCU and ICU and stuff like that. But those were different days. But the typical day.
Those switched every week.
Yeah. We would be on a different team every week, no matter what. And then.
Yeah. A different sub-rotation.
But for the typical day where we were on like the floors, I think I would get there at 6. So a little bit before then, print out some papers, like the list of all the patients, make sure I met up with the residents, which was sometimes one of the toughest part of the day was going in there, trying to figure out who the hell your resident is. And be like, oh, okay, like here I print out these because I didn't know who they were. Sometimes it was not very obvious. One time my resident didn't even show and nobody was there, and I was just standing there with the other student, asking, "Where's Team C?"
Yeah.
The disbanded evidently. So we go there. You try to find your resident. You learn about the people that were there over the night. They tell you if anything happened overnight. And then I would go see the patients, usually by myself, or sometimes, I would go with the students. We'd go, so we would see more than just my own individual patient. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I'd have, it started off as 1, and then I was able to work up to 2 to 3. But, you go see them, you pretty much like act like you would write up a note. And when you would present to an attending. And I'm not sure, are you familiar with any of the when we have to present to the attending, we go in a room and we pretty much tell the head doctor that what's going on with each patient before she does her official or he or her does the official rounds.
Mm-hmm. And that was daily.
Essentially, yeah, daily.
Yeah.
So we would do that, and then we would go on rounds where we walk around with the doctor. The doctor sees the patients, and then we would kind of disperse. By that time, usually it was around time where we'd need to go to a meeting, and then we'd come back and do whatever the residents needed to do after that. We had a call shift where we stayed a little bit later, like a couple times during the week.
Like a 24-hour shift?
No, like a 7. It was like till 7 as opposed to
5 or something?
5.
Okay.
You had to stay a little later to get admissions and stuff.
Gotcha.
So it was fine, honestly.
It was
and
okay.
now that I've had a couple internal medicine rotations, honestly, this one wasn't too terrible. Like the other one was honestly a little bit more of a pain in the ass. Looking back now, it wasn't bad. But it was okay. I did a lot more paperwork in this one than I did in the other one.
Yeah.
I do remember I was doing, there was a lot of that stuff. But I got to see some cool things. For the life of me, all I can think about is that time they got me to pay for the Chipotle. Instead, I was like, why am I the one paying? They wanted me to get Chipotle with them so bad, and then they charged me for the cheese dip. I was like, well, that's rude. I didn't even want that. Couldn't think of any medical stories. No.
Okay.
So, and then I would do the rounding with the attending. We would go to a meeting. One of the best parts of this rotation was one of the meetings we would just meet with like a specialist, but like we would discuss a topic, whether it's coronary artery disease or pulmonary embolisms or whatever. And we would, do these presentations every day. And then, but one that was actually really helpful was every other day we would meet with this attending he was a nephrologist that, is late 60s, something like that. And he was a very, very personable person, and he was a great guy, and he really helped us understand how to think about medicine as opposed to just – because we had been learning in the books, and then he would ask us about the people we saw and, like, what was going on in the hospital. And as we would go and explain everything that happened throughout our day, he would, like, stop us and be like, what are you thinking now? Blah, blah, blah. And he would be like, what would you think if this happened? And we would just talk medicine for 2 hours. And that kind of training, it was very, very beneficial.
Yeah, that seems more, even if it wasn't hands-on, like he walked you through the process and stuff. Feels like you learned a lot more than just going around and doing a presentation every now and then.
Yeah. And that, I can say, that was very beneficial to be at Jersey City for that.
Yeah.
That was great. It was kind of a random tangent because those were every Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
And we would talk medicine. That was great. And then hopefully by then try to go home. If not, be running around doing more copy work.
I want to talk about a particular student in your rotation. I'm not going to name him by name, but we're going to call him Jason from here on out. Okay. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I assume I know where you're going with this.
Okay, so Jordan had this one student. Actually, sorry, it wasn't in his rotation. It was in our friend's rotation.
Yes, yeah. I was like, I think I know where you're going with this, but
yes.
Jason and me were not like...
No, but we knew of Jason. But since we're on the topic of internal medicine, I wanted to bring him up just because it's so taboo and
what not to do in your internal medicine rotation.
Yes, hot tips. Probably the top ones for you folks listening who are going to be starting internal medicine rotations.
I think that's where we should start, is what
Yes.
not to do,
What
and then
not
maybe
to
what
do.
would help. But what not to do, for the love of God, do not bring your scooter and ride it around.
And this
the
is
floor.
like a foot scooter, right?
I think it was like a razor.
Like a razor. Like you put
That
your
was how it
feet
was
on it
described
and
to me.
push off.
Yeah. It was not an electric scooter.
No.
Thank God.
Either way, don't bring any type of scooter to the hospital and ride it around.
Yeah. Do not take your shoes off during a meeting.
Yes, and walk around barefoot.
Yes. Do not do that in the hospital, period, probably.
Yes.
But definitely not in a meeting with your residents.
Yes. What else did he do?
There was a scenario where this was his deciding factor. This is when he got in like some serious trouble, and This was one of the dumbest things he did. So he was talking to a patient. We go see patients without the attendings and residents and everything. And I guess somewhere in them talking, he told him that he really didn't need to take his metformin.
This is Jason telling the patient.
Yes, Jason, or whatever was said. I was not there. But whatever was said, the patient felt like he did not need to take his metformin anymore because of the interaction he had with Jason. Mm-hmm. And this guy was in the hospital due to DKA, which is essentially exactly like when diabetes has gone bad for you, and you're now, So
this medicine he
definitely needed for the love of God, especially while he was in the, because then his sugar started spiking again, and the attending goes and asks the patient why, what's going on? And he goes, I just figured I could stop it because of what your medical student said to me. And so just that statement right there, that guy, the attending was furious. So they went out looking for the student. And so I would not be giving advice. Okay, so what not to do. Do not give advice that is contradictory to the attending. It is their actual patient. Do not convince the patient of anything that the attending is,
Yes.
So he got in a lot of trouble for that. He had to write an apology letter and everything like that. That was
to the patient, or to the attending, or to the hospital?
Hospital, I think.
Oh goodness! Didn't he get kicked out of the hospital too?
I think he just couldn't return. I think he didn't get he wasn't forcibly removed.
No, but he
I don't think he was allowed to return for
rotation.
a certain rotation. I think he was able to finish the rotation, but he wasn't able to return because it was kind of in the works.
Yeah.
They were just kind of over him.
So top 3 internal medicine is don't bring your scooter to the hospital.
Well, you could bring it in. Just find a safe place to store it.
Don't ride it around, at least.
Not inside.
Don't walk around barefoot in a hospital. That's just asking for some type of disease.
Yes.
And then third, don't tell patients to stop taking medicine when you're really not even a doctor yet. You're just a student. You should be listening to your official doctor. So whether you're a patient or a medical student, listen to this. Listen to your actual doctor. Medical students, where they probably know more than us normal folks who aren't in the medical field, still listen to your doctor.
Definitely do not do those things. Just, listen to your doctor. Do not try to contradict the attending too. That's huge red flag. Do not use your anecdotal evidence over scientific evidence.
There you go. Yeah. What
not
works
yet in your career.
What might work for you might not work for everyone else.
Don't start with that in your first year of actual medicine.
No, absolutely not.
You got to wait 5 years for that.
So those are some things of what not to do. What are some things to do to whether impress your attending or to basically really shine in this rotation?
For one, know your patients. Through and through, if you're able to do a comprehensive history where you can do everything about the patient, you can actually format it in a correct way, and you can just tell them what's going on and tell them the pertinent details too if they are in a rush. That goes a long way to building rapport with your attending and also just letting you shine a little bit.
There you go.
I would say that's one of the best things to do. Know your patient. Definitely also I would reach out to the residents. Try to get their help. They know these attendings better than you do right now. With me, it was fresh. I didn't even know who the residents were. I had to look at them on luckily they have their pictures on a poster.
Oh, good.
The attendings, I did not know any of them, and we were bouncing around from team to team. But the good thing is that if you try to get in good with the residents, I remember my friend Rosa, she's been on this podcast, she did internal medicine with me. And what we would do is I would always ask Rosa for my restaurant recommendations for the day. Because first off, Rosa, great with recommendations. She could talk for 10 minutes on that. But she will find the perfect place, but then it would allow the other residents to chime in. Mm-hmm. And then you could build, and if you had them on your side, they could at least help you when you were presenting to not make you look like an idiot.
That's good advice. Yeah. So internal medicine is probably the majority portion on step 2, right?
Yes.
How much? What's the percentage? It's like 60.
I think it's 60%. I'm not sure. At least I don't think anybody knows the mystical number exactly, but I think it's somewhere in.
But
that
it's
range.
over half. It's like it's literally the largest portion of what you should study for STEP.
Significantly, yes. And even the UWorld for that shelf is, I think it's like double all the other questions. Yeah.
So what's some of the top subjects you saw on the test?
I will say that there was a significant amount of cardiology. I think the pulmonology questions, while I won't be able to remember like the exact ones, I remember those ones were more of the tricky, they were more like life-saving pulmonology questions. And maybe not, they didn't give maybe the most detailed explanation of what was going on. So you kind of had to make your guesses on those kind of questions. Mm-hmm. I would say know those trauma aspects to the which I didn't think I would need to know necessarily during that shelf. I mean, I saw a couple fluid wave curves and stuff like that, or fluid air curves, or whatever the hell those things are that show obstructive versus restrictive. I don't know. The shelf, I would say there's a ton of questions. I would say get started at it early because there's just so much to cover. Cardiology is always a huge aspect. You should know that at least the basics and about MIs and stuff like that very, very well. And
what about EKGs?
EKGs, there's not as much reading. If you do get an EKG question, it's probably going to be one where you just are reading the EKG. They might describe what leads are elevated or things like that. But that, that's not, you're not having to read it. So I would say for the rotation, it's always good to know how to read an EKG. If you don't know how to read an EKG, get the book by Dale Dubin. That is the easiest thing. I remember I read that right even before medical school just because I had some free time as a scribe and I worked with a cardiologist. So I was like, I need to learn how to read these. And super helpful. And honestly taught me way more than even I needed to know when I got into medical school because they're not worried about the EKG necessarily. But for the rotation, it's good to know. Yeah, I would say know that. I would say know a lot. There was a lot of GI questions, stuff like that. Know all the different types of gastritis and diarrhea, constipation, stuff like that. Where the cancers would be located and what their specific symptoms would be. For the life of me, some of these are coming back, but my memory is a little foggy since then. But yeah, STEP was heavy internal med.
Yeah,
like those are where your tricky questions are going to come from too. Like the ones that are a little bit iffy and you go, what the hell is this? Like, why are these non-specific symptoms? And then they can ask you a bunch of different difficult, like some of the answer choices are very close to what they actually mean. So then you just, you have to pick the best guess.
Yeah.
It was definitely the heavy portion of it.
Yeah. I remember when you first started internal med, we actually both had COVID.
I was about to actually bring that up as well. So we mentioned I couldn't go into the ICU or the CCU because of COVID. Mm-hmm. So I had a CCU rotation that was 2 weeks. And I was actually very, very upset because I couldn't go to it. I was like, well, damn, what am I going to do? I had to do all this like essentially paperwork and other stuff but I couldn't actually go into the CCU. And then I got COVID that Monday of Mary Beth gave me COVID the Monday of that rotation beginning. Mm-hmm. So then I got to do my whole quarantine period without really anybody knowing because I didn't have to show up for anything at that time. Uh-huh. And so I just stayed in and made sure I lasted past the quarantine because that was back when the quarantine period was like 14 weeks or 14 days. 14 days for the love of God.
It was still 14
days.
Yeah.
And so I was like, and if you get COVID, they were essentially saying that I had to make up those days. But because I didn't have to be in the hospital, it was actually a perfect storm. Plus, I didn't have the booster at that time.
You didn't even have the original
or not
vaccine.
The booster. I didn't have the vaccine at the time. So I remember everybody was like, ah! And then they saw me and they were like, oh, he's completely fine.
Yeah. I remember.
You infected me.
Because this was like in the middle of a winter. And like it was snowing so hard. And like by that time, not just you, but your whole like all of the other students were like texting, like basically plotting not to come in because of the snow. Mm-hmm. And everyone's like, should we tell them we all have COVID? And I'm like, no, you're going to get in trouble. And then I don't remember what happened.
I couldn't even use that excuse because I technically had it. And I didn't want to get caught with it. I was like, well, the good thing is we live so close to it.
Yeah, that was the bad thing, though.
Yeah.
Because you live so close that you had to actually be there. Yeah.
Yeah, that was fine, though, because half the time when it was, I remember one specific time it was like snowing really badly and some of the other people couldn't come. And they kind of just sent me home like halfway through the day. And I was like, oh, sick. I got to go play in the snow. Yes. Because being from Georgia, I don't see the snow often. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah, especially that much. Hot tip for all the medical students. Do not tell anyone where you live, like in proximity.
Yeah, don't do that.
Because if something like that happens where it's a snow day and like Jordan, I don't know if you used it as an excuse one time, maybe not for internal med, but you were like, oh, I can't get there. My car snowed in, but we're like 2-minute walk away.
I don't think I ever used that excuse, but I think other people, because remember we lived in
I thought you thought about
it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure
You definitely thought about it.
I'm sure I was debating it. That would have been a good one. But we lived in the apartment with some of the residents, so they knew.
Oh, that's true. Maybe it was, like I said, it could have been a different rotation.
Yeah.
But I remember.
One where I didn't tell them. I was like, oh, wow, that's a long distance away from my house.
Yeah. But that's it. Like, honestly, that's a really good advice. Don't tell anyone where you live because if a natural disaster happens and you're conveniently near the hospital, you'll have to still go in or whatever.
Yeah. I think it's safe to say just don't tell anybody where you live, period.
That's probably also for, like, safety reasons.
Yeah, for any reason at all. Just if anybody asks, just tell them no.
I don't have a house.
Yeah.
I'm a medical student. I'm poor.
Yeah, essentially, though, barely was a house. Yeah, the rotation was great. I didn't...
Great
is not the answer. The rotation was so-so.
Yeah.
I think I met a lot of cool, interesting people. And, you know, I will say that it gave me a different outlook, like Dr. Weiner and everything, the way he would teach us medicine. But as far as, like, establishing a love for internal medicine, it kind of gave me, like, a pit in my stomach.
Yeah.
But I will say, if you can, it is definitely an important rotation for your step and shelves and everything else, even the pediatric shelf. Even the pediatric shelf had a ton of internal medicine on it, family medicine one as well. So if you can get started at that aspect of medicine, like that's where the most of those questions are going to come from.
Yeah. Well, I do want to point out, like Jordan was thinking about cardiology for a while, and then after internal medicine, he was like, do I really want to do cardiology?
Yeah, I mean, like I think I mentioned it actually earlier. I had scribed for a cardiologist, multiple great cardiologists in our hometown. And the heart is the most amazing organ. Like the fail-safes built into it, the fact that it's not, it's just a pump too. Like there's a lot of, it makes sense in a lot of ways, even though it is an amazing and very, very essential organ. So I wanted to do it. I like that lifestyle. But if I had to do an internal medicine residency and then do all the competing and everything to become a cardiologist, like that also gives me a pit in my stomach.
Like if you could skip the IM part and just go to the cardiology, I think you'd do it in a heartbeat.
Yeah, I mean, I would do that in a heartbeat. Yeah, like if I could just work on hearts, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, but the fact that you have to take the stepping stone of doing internal med.
Yeah, and it's like cutthroat too. So I was like, if I do internal med and then I don't get cardiology, I'm going to
hate yourself.
Yeah.
Well, Jordan, I think that's about it for this episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. If you haven't followed us yet on Instagram, join us on the Off-White Coat Podcast. If you have any questions, shoot us an email at offwhitecoatpodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, so we'll see you here next week where I get to be host again. Haha.
I'm scared.
Yeah. All right. Bye, people.
Hey everyone, I want to take this time to tell you about our friends over at TrueLearn. They have this top-of-the-line test bank that is perfect for any upcoming board exams that you may have. They have test banks for all types of exams. So whether you're studying for medical school, nursing school, OT, pharmacy, and others like speech pathology, TrueLearn is the way to go. If you're like me and going through medical school, they have question banks for all the big exams, like Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3, with quality assessments for each exam. Look, I know we didn't go into healthcare because we love taking tests. This is the hard part of the job. Make it easy on yourself with TrueLearn. Sign up now with the code OFFWHITECOAT to get $25 off your purchase. That's OFF white coat, no spaces, to get $25 off your purchase. This is a test bank that you do not want to pass up on. Make this easy on yourself. Take the deal, pass your boards, and get back to enjoying the reason you went into healthcare. And make sure to use Off White Coat when you pick it up.